Monsters, Myths, and Mary. Written by Phyllis Rogers. Read by ParkerStark. The short following tone indicates a split in the chapter, but not the end of the chapter. Thank you very much. Enjoy the story. Chapter 1. Paige Harper was used to letting clients ramble on. It's all part of the job when you're a beautician, but when a client says they're a succubus, it's time to finish up and get them out the door. The problem was she couldn't bring herself to send the woman on her way. Maybe it was her eyes. They were aqua blue and drew her into their perfect, swirling depths. She dragged herself back to the conversation to keep from losing herself in the woman's gaze. The client, Mary, faced Paige straight on, giving her a noticeable shudder. There have always been what you would call vampires, Paige, she divulged as the young beautician finished pinning her fresh-cut auburn hair into a neat bun, in the same manner that there has always been a need to hide this fact. My people, the Lillan, procured lands, held titles, and bred powerful families, the Habsburgs, the Ptolemaic dynasty, and my family, the Tudors. Paige was fixated on her eyes again as the words slowly penetrated her senses. Mary blinked, and it was both subtle and consuming. I was told it was the purity of our blood that made our children special. Her voice snapped Paige back into the conversation. Right. Lillan? She breathed. Those eyes seemed to both hold her gaze and scan the shop at the same time. The man that had driven Mary to the appointment sat near the exit in a faded zebra print director's chair. He now watched over the edge of the style magazine he was reading. She wondered if this man was a succubus too. All done, ma'am, Paige half whispered. This woman might be nuts, but she was the only paying customer the salon had had in almost a week. Legend says that in the 6th century, the Erbe Osatum, or 4 wives, Lilith, Agrat, Nama, and Isheth, started families in Mesopotamia. They lived in harmony, taking only what was necessary to survive. Mary's eyes darkened. A visiting cleric entered the village, and Lilith believed as the first wife she should get to greet him. Her sister, Nama, protested and killed the man. When news made it back to the elders, our ancestors were killed or driven out of the area. As they spread across the earth, they had trouble controlling their appetites, and as husbands, wives, servants, and countrymen vanished, excuses had to be made. She stepped around the chair and glided to the full-length mirror. Excuses? Paige asked, voice cracking despite her efforts to keep it from doing so. She flushed red, embarrassed by her obvious fear. Mary's gaze snapped back to her emblazoned cheeks, and she felt as if she were being examined. Yes, excuses. Black Death, Spanish flu, even the Inquisition were all used to explain the waves of death. Paige was a little nauseated as the depths of those words sank in. That's millions of people. She wondered if she should be embarrassed at her naivete as Mary softened her gaze. If Mary had noticed the shock in her voice, she didn't show it. How many cattle have been slaughtered for your murders? We did what we had to so that we could survive, though it would be a lie to say none of us reveled in the hunt or took more than our fair share. What about the police, or the church? Did anyone try to stop you? She was more curious than frightened at this point. Maybe it wasn't quite proper, but she couldn't help herself. She liked knowing details. Noah, Mary said, and her driver joined her silently at her side. He seemed much less ominous than Mary, and a lot more tan. We were called demons, but there were many religious leaders and politicians among us. Pope Innocent VII caused quite a stir when he was caught drinking choir boys. Individuals and groups would try to destroy us, but their small minds and superstitions were no defense against the reality of what a true demon was. There was more than a little pomposity in her voice. She pulled a bright red envelope out of her brushed leather purse that her driver had been holding. Then what happened? What brings you here? Paige subconsciously ran the hand holding the envelope up to her neck. Is she going to kill me? No one actually tells you what you ask unless you aren't going to be alive to worry about the information spreading, she thought to herself. In the end, it is our own family that would destroy us. She turned her statuesque figure back to the mirror, drawing the young woman out of her thoughts. Infighting, ambition, and bad alliances were our greatest detriment. My own cousin tried to have me killed because she was sitting on a throne that was rightfully mine. Throne? Mary smiled brilliantly. A creepy feeling washed over Paige. The book slipped from her lap as Paige dozed off in her pleather recliner. There was so much information about Mary, Queen of Scots, that contradicted itself. Knowing that she was a succubus may have been the explanation for that, but it still made it hard to sift through. When she got to the part about Queen Elizabeth beheading Mary, she decided to switch it to something a little lighter, Twilight. It was a fast read, and it was a nice break from all the eerie details. Her dreams were full of queens and castles, of knights and vampires. Sleeping in a chair all night left her exhausted with bedhead the next day, with the long chestnut curls for a tangled nightmare. By her third cup of coffee, she was ready to go downstairs and open her shop. The fluorescence buzzed on, and she put her Garfield mug down on the waxing station. Her hazel eyes flinched at the retinal assault and then landed on a bright red envelope near her mail slot. Her heart raced as she broke the seal with a teasing comb, and inside she found 5 $100 bills. She opened the heavy paper to read the note. Miss Harper, thank you for your service and your discretion. Consider this a tip for a job well done. M. Her mouth went dry and she was weak for a moment, but the $500 brought her back to her senses quickly. She decided to open up the shop a little late so that she could do some shopping. Tonight she was not going to have to eat mac and cheese for dinner. She put on a large pair of dark glasses to hide the circles under her eyes and practically ran out the door. Walking down the block was Mary's driver going to a cafe. Her curiosity defeated her sanity, and she followed him at a discreet distance. He was sitting at the counter, so she sat at a booth nearby. Leanne, a big-haired, platinum-blonde waitress, hurried to wait on him. "What can I get you, sugar? The special of the day is huevos rancheros," she said in the most sickly sweet voice Paige had ever heard. "Coffee and whatever fresh fruit you might have." She couldn't detect any accent in his voice, and she wondered if he was a landlord too. Leanne jotted his order down and glanced over at the corner booth. "You want a cinnamon roll and a coffee, Paige?" She was busted. Yeah, thanks, Leanne." He turned and waved at her. "Do you mind if I join you, Miss Harper?" Leanne tucked her pen behind her ear and set an extra set of silverware at the booth. "Suit yourself, Mr. She gestured to the opposite side of the vinyl red booth. "Just Noah, thank you," he said as he scooted in beside her instead. Leanne smiled at her as she slid the setting over. Leanne smiled at her as she slid over, letting him sit down. "Rough night?" "Yeah." She tried smashing her hair down a little more and realized he was talking about the sunglasses she was still wearing and put them on the table. He grinned and it lit up his silver-gray eyes. The waitress put 2 cups of coffee in front of them, a giant cinnamon roll in front of Paige, and a banana in front of Noah. "This is the only fresh fruit we have. Can I get you guys anything else?" They both said cream at the same time. Leanne was shaking her head as she gave them their cream and their checks. "A banana isn't much for a growing boy," she joked awkwardly while buttering her cinnamon roll. "Do you want a mountain climber?" He appeared confused. "It's a triple cheeseburger with bacon and spam and a fried egg and hatch chilies." A sneer ran across his lips. "I'll stick to my banana. I'm not much of a meat eater." "How long have you worked for Mary, and are you, Succubus?" She tore off a piece of her cinnamon roll as she waved a hand, hoping to encompass all of it, everything she meant. Thankfully, Noah seemed to understand her intended meaning. 6 years in December, but I have known her my whole life. My father worked for her before I did, his father before that. And no, I'm just as mortal as you. That would be an incubus, though, because I'm a guy. You could also say dohi, because that's all-inclusive. Half of her cinnamon roll was gone by the time that he got around to peeling his banana, but she was hanging on his every word. "So it's like the family business?" She widened her already large eyes. He shrugged, taking a big bite out of his banana. "What are you up to today?" he asked, changing the topic. "Well, a guardian angel left me a tip, and so I'm going shopping." "Awesome. I love shopping. Do you care if I join you? Because I don't know anybody in this town other than you." He turned his head slightly and made puppy eyes. "You'll probably be bored, but I don't mind you tagging along." She wondered if Mary had told him to stay close to her for some reason, but didn't consider the fact that she had been the one that followed him into the Luna Cafe. He threw down a few bills for his meal, and she did the same as they left. He walked close by her as they headed down the block to the thrift and save. It was fun watching the faces on the people she knew as they passed them on their short walk. This town was going to implode from all the gossip, and she loved it. "My friend owns this shop. It's right beside the electric company's office, so I need to stop in on the way past." She wasn't going to tell him it was because she was hoping to drum up business from the town's busybodies. Yes, she needed to pay her electric bill, but a few paying customers would mean she could pay next month's too. They would all want to get appointments just to find out who the new hottie was. Tracy shamelessly checked Noah out when he came in, giving Paige the thumbs up when he wasn't looking. "Paige, I got in a Beatles t-shirt last week and held it for you." She clapped her hands excitedly before realizing that she probably seemed like an idiot. Noah was carefully perusing a rack of jackets and didn't seem to notice. After parading him through a few stores and public utilities, it was time to hit the big league. Rockin' Robin's Groceries and more. There would be a lot of people in there. They walked slowly towards the corner grocery store. "What's it like to work?" She leaned in close and whispered. "For Succubus, Succubi, Succubino? That can't be right." I noticed that you've got a lot of different styles of music represented on those t-shirts, so what's that about? He avoided her question. I love music, all of it. Now, about my question. He stopped in front of the grocery store. Interesting, I'm more of a pan-flute guy myself. She opened the door and held it for him. I have to get back to Mary, but I had fun. See you soon, Paige. She stood there for a second, just holding the door, watching him before entering the store by herself. She went inside and dropped her bags into a shopping cart before peeking out the large glass windows. Her evil plans were dashed. Now she focused on the task at hand and grabbed a few luxury items like name-brand cereal and shampoo. A few months back, she had bought 20 jars of clearance sale peanut butter. While it had definitely kept her fed, it was getting tedious. Before checking out, she went to the magazine and book section and got the rest of the Twilight books. She was a fast reader, and she knew it wouldn't take her long to make it through these books, which were totally research on mythical beings. She was realizing just how out of shape she was as she made the long walk home with all of her groceries and purchases. I am not outdoorsy, she had cried when her mother caught her skipping softball practice to read at the library one year. That might just be the understatement of the year, Paige Margaret Harper, she'd said. Tessa Harper believed in being a triple threat. She was bookish, ran half marathons for fun, and would debate with anybody about anything in which she believed. She put all her purchases on the counter and checked her caller ID. There were no missed calls, just as she had assumed. Leaving the groceries be for the moment, she carried the t-shirts into the washer before she grabbed her laptop and carried it downstairs. Her cold cup of coffee was still sitting on the color shelf, so she put her computer on the waxing station, making a mental note to grab the cup later to wash it. She also made another mental note to do it before it built its own bioculture. She opened up the shop and sat in her salon chair to spend the day doing research, as she doubted she would have any customers. There were thousands of pages about succubi, and nearly as many about Mary Stuart. Paige was becoming more and more paranoid the longer she read the descriptions of their strengths and weaknesses. Lots of information says that they were just legends made up by simple, naive people for the unexplainable, and then she would stumble onto darker blogs of people claiming to be dohai and were trolling for sex. Those pages were far scarier to her than the more abstract, otherworldly interpretations she had found. She opened up a text file to try and arrange her thoughts into some semblance of order and made a bullet note. Things I know about Lilith. 1. Drinks blood. Vampire? 2. Power from sex. Gross. 3. Immortal. Cool. 4. Can turn into bats. 5. Can't be in the sun. 6. No reflection. 7. Silver bullets. Werewolf. She saved the file and realized that there were no decent information other than what Mary had given her. She didn't know what was real and what wasn't. There had been no such things as vampires or dohi or werewolves. Mary knew what she thought she had seen, but there had to be a Mary knew what she thought she'd seen, but there had to be a logical explanation. Her mind raced trying to come up with one, however far-fetched it might be. Maybe she was a magician. Houdini was able to convince people that they were witnessing actual magic. Paige let her head fall back against the chair with a gentle thud. This was going to drive her nuts. She needed more information before she made a decision about what she believed one way or the other. He stood in front of the Audi and inhaled the arid desert breeze. She was here, that bitch queen, in a town of less than 200 people, so she couldn't hide for long. His thumbs rubbed over the scars on his palms. Before he made a plan, he was going to need a snack. When he opened the trunk, the owner's wild eyes were seeing thousands of beetles move in to feed on him. End of Chapter 1. To continue to Chapter 2, please click the annotation on screen. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.